Ghazal. The election would be the first national vote ever held in South Sudan. He added that his government is doing everything possible to ensure that what is crucial to conducting the elections is put in place. Kiir is expected to face his long-standing rival, first Vice President Riek Machar, who has yet to confirm his candidacy. The opposition has accused the government of lacking the political will to hold elections, but Kiir said he's committed to free and fair elections. Now, almost 400,000 people died in a 5-year civil war before Kiir and Machar signed a peace deal in 2018 and formed a unity government. To Sudan now, where in the capital, precious books in a major library have been burned and the National Museum has been cut off for weeks by fighting. In Darfur, another museum is at risk from seasonal rains after projectiles punctured the roof. The conflict that has been raging between rival military factions in Sudan since mid-April has taken a toll on the country's rich cultural heritage, which includes the ancient kingdom of Kush that controlled trade between Southern Africa and Egypt at the time of the pharaohs. According to a report published last week by Heritage for Peace, a cultural heritage NGO in touch with local researchers and archaeologists, at least 28 cultural and archaeological sites around the country have been targeted or suffered collateral damage. Some sites, including several universities, are being used for military purposes, according to Mahasin Yusuf, an archaeologist at Bahri University. Na intro ya interview. Okay, so that's the latest in Sudan, and we'll get to talk about that a little bit later on after the break. But right now, get this, the 7th day of the 7th month, July, is World Kiswahili Language Day, set aside by UNESCO and the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, making it the first African language to be recognized in such a manner by the UN. Now, a fun fact about Swahili: it's considered one of the top most spoken languages in the world, and in Africa, it is the most widely used native language. Now, the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO SG and CEO Dr. James Njogu joins me ahead of the World Kiswahili Day celebrations that will be held tomorrow across the globe. Dr. Njogu, karibu sana to the show. And you've seen what I've done there. I've used Swahili to welcome you.
Thank you very much. Asante sana, Jesse Rogers.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Tomorrow, the 7th of July, is a day we are celebrating the World Kiswahili Language Day. This day is very important to the Africa, considering that Swahili is spoken mainly in Africa, starting from the Eastern Africa, and it has spread to more than 14 countries, and it is expected that it will spread even wider.
Okay.
Over 200,000 people speak Swahili globally. This day is not just for Africa, it's a global, it's a world Kiswahili Language Day to celebrate. This day was set aside specifically by UNESCO, pushed by Tanzania, who presented a resolution. And this was supported by Kenya and many other African countries across the board, from south, west, central, east, and even north, because it's a critical language that unifies Africa. Initially, it had been recognized even by UN, because in 1950s, UN set a unit, a Kiswahili unit at New York. This is basically a decision of the member states.
Okay.
UNESCO has around 193 member states. And during the General Conference 2021, on 23rd November, they all agreed that Swahili is an important day. And I mean, Swahili is an important language. And indeed, Swahili is used at the AU level. In fact, it is a working language of the African Union.
So, and perhaps just to cut you short, for those who might be wondering why the UN would decide to go big with, the 7th day of July to mark a language, what exactly is in the Kiswahili language that gives it so much impetus that it's held, on a certain day across the world, it's celebrated? So how would you, quantify the importance of the Swahili language?
Thank you very much. A good question. The history of it and the choice of dates is because of Mwalimu Julius Kabarage Nyerere. In 1954, under TANU, that is the Tanganyika African National Union Party, he called upon the Tanzanians to use the language for purposes of fighting for independence. And of course, calling them to unite with that language is perhaps because there are many languages in Tanzania, around 120. So basically, from that point, we can see that Swahili is a unifying language. So if it were unified the Tanzanian to fight for their independence, it is going to unify Africa to have a voice within the UN system. So we are looking forward. Currently at a UN level, we have about 6 languages. The latest to enter that is Russian. So perhaps in time to come very soon, we shall be having Swahili being a working language. So you can imagine in a conference, the UN conference, we listen and speak in Swahili. That will be very big mileage for Africa, and in particular Eastern Africa.
Let's speak about some of the challenges facing the spread of the Kiswahili language, not just in Africa, but across the world. And one might mention that, political goodwill at times is lacking, that we see individuals perhaps in positions of power, whether in government or civil society, having a long-standing conviction that only a European language can deliver proper education. And we've seen a couple of changes across the continent. In South Africa, for example, it being inculcated as an option in terms of their syllabus. What would you say is a major challenge perhaps facing the spread of Swahili, and is political goodwill one of those challenges?
For a long time, really, we have been under colonial masters. And being under colonial, they must control. They must control. And one of the biggest weapons to control is language. And of course, use their languages. Every language, may it be French, may it be English, may it be Arabic. The idea is to make sure as many people speak that language, understand that language. You are able to control the socioeconomic development. You are able to control quite a lot. And therefore, it has been a challenge, and in fact, for UN to recognize this, it has been a long journey. It is a long journey, and it is part of removing that thought that the European language are superior to others. They may not. So it is time that Africa also seeks to be heard, to be understood by use of one common languages. So one handle in these challenges have been won. And by recognizing it as a language internationally, by setting a date, that is one step that to Africa is a big step, meaning that soon the other handles will go over them. Of course, there are other challenges in terms of training, in terms of getting the various institutions of learning abroad to teach. But we are pleased that even in US, there are over 100 universities teaching Kiswahili. Actually, as we speak, Ghana is celebrating, but then Ghana is in Africa. Yeah. But we know Swahili is taught in Japan. We know it is taught in China. We know it's being taught in Germany. It is taught in some key countries, meaning that that political goodwill in these countries are there. Okay. And in fact, the expression by the fact that a decision was approved at the General Conference where 193 countries meet, it means that political will is there by accepting that. So the other handles might relate to technicalities and opportunities and cost involved, but the interest is there. And we are sure in not many years to come, the language will be at UN level, it will be spoken, and many interests across the globe will be speaking Swahili.
Well, it's definitely an upward trajectory from the picture you've painted, but equally, let's break down what exactly the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO does. And as you do that, let's speak about the milestones that have been achieved in the last decade when we're speaking about this awesome language.
For the National Commission for UNESCO, may I first of all say that the Constitution of Kenya, Article 7, 1, 2, identifies the 3 languages that are official languages in Kenya. Kiswahili is number 1, English is number 2, and the Kenyan Sign Language is number 3. So the value at national level is put across. About the National Commission for UNESCO, we implement UNESCO programs. We have 5 programs under UNESCO. The first is education, which deals with all matters of education across the board. Then we have natural science. Natural sciences deals with all natural sciences across the board, may it be geology, water, setting aside man and biosphere reserve and other biodiversity, setting up geopark. In fact, Kenya, we are developing the first geopark in Kenya, and the third in Africa after Morocco and Gorogoro in Tanzania, which will be Baringo geopark. So that is under natural science. We have the third program, that is social and human sciences, that deals with all aspects of social sciences, may it be gender, sport, and delivering quite a lot to the society, including policies like in sport, among others. The fourth one is culture, and this is where Swahili falls. Culture has a lot to do with the World Heritage Sites and protecting the World Heritage Site. Already I've had some that World Heritage Sites destroyed in Sudan. Yes. So really that UNESCO comes in, and Sudan also have its National Commission for UNESCO. Yes. So they must be working so hard to protect them under the program of culture. So there are many conventions under culture where you protect artifacts, cultural artifacts, identify intangible cultural heritage, underwater heritage. Again, it is very wide. In fact, next week, we'll be having an event in Mombasa where we'll be receiving stolen artifacts. We have also seen compensation in some of the stolen artifacts to different communities. Yeah. So that is program number 5, which is very wide, and Kenyans are passionate about culture. It's a devolved function to the counties, and they are celebrating even Kiswahili Day. Within the counties, Mombasa is leading, county number 1. The other program is communication and information. This is about implementing the the UN plan of action for media, for journalists, and media communication, use of artificial intelligence. Again, it's very wide. And what we do as the commission is mainly capacity building, sensitizing, have projects on different areas, and even advise the government, the ministries on various aspects under UNESCO, including CBC. Kenya National Commission for UNESCO played a major role by submitting its position with regard to UNESCO.
Okay, that's well noted. Thank you for breaking that down. So as we head towards the 7th day of July, what is set aside, at least for the Kenyans who are celebrating our language that is recognized internationally? What plans have been set aside to celebrate this truly auspicious day?
Thank you very much. We are excited because several counties have put plans to celebrate. Mombasa, and we'll have our CS in charge of tourism, wildlife, and heritage. Our able CS, Penina Malonza, will be officiating celebration in Mombasa. Nakuru County, again headed by the governor, Susan Kihika, there will be celebration. And other counties. And in Nairobi, we are celebrating. We started on Tuesday with the group called 2023 Global African Diaspora. It is being led by the diaspora. And tomorrow we have set aside to celebrate Kiswahili. We have key speakers there, people like Leonard Mama Botella, Wala Binwala, and professors. Names. So really, so big names in Swahili language. Yes. The real drivers, the real gurus, they'll be speaking about it and celebrating more. And we are also celebrating them for being champions of the Kiswahili language in Kenya. So we are really set, and we welcome Kenyans to also celebrate wherever they will be. Please, we'll request them to speak Swahili. And the whole of Africa, because I know this program is reaching all of Africa, is about Africa Speak. Definitely. And Africa is speaking. So let us speak in the language that is African. And we promote Swahili together, so that then we can have one language that will unify us as Africa.
No, just a disclaimer, we have to use English during the show so we can definitely cross the borders and we're understood by not just Kenyans, but equally those who are watching within the East African region. So for those of you back at home who are wondering why we're celebrating World Kiswahili Day while speaking the Queen's English, well, that's basically due to communication and all that. As we finalize, you know, it's usually said that at times heroes are celebrated away from home than they're celebrated at home. When I flip it and talk about language, you've mentioned a couple of countries, including Japan, that are picking up the Swahili language and definitely have inculcated it in some extent in their syllabus as well. I mentioned South Africa. So when it comes to Kenya, are you happy with the level of uptake perhaps in Swahili? What needs to be done to perhaps boost this? So at the end of the day, as I mentioned, we don't frown upon those who prefer the Swahili language over English and the other languages that are, that are spoken right here in the country. What needs to be done? Bearing in mind, we equally have a strong ethnic, presence in the country, over 43 communities. How do we push Swahili to the place it should be?
Well, the sky is not the limit.
Definitely.
There is actually no limit. There is much that can be done, and much has been achieved already.
Yes.
Even by identifying that Swahili becomes an official language, used in parliament, used in the country, in the offices, formally, but much is needed to be done, including more education, more training across the country, even within the diaspora that is becoming very strong. And thanks to the government that they have set aside a whole state department in charge of diaspora. Yes. This is really wonderful. And actually, it is the State Department organizing this participation of the diaspora, the 2023 Global Africa Diaspora. So really, there is a big opportunity. And for the gurus that we are celebrating, the leaders in Swahili language, they are really sensitizing, and this is part of it, like having more celebration every now and then, and encouraging the learning and the use of Swahili, including at the county levels. If all the assemblies at the county levels could be encouraged to use Swahili. Of course, I'm sure Mombasa is using more Swahili than any other language, because if you visit the governor there, and Kilifi, Kwale, and Lamu, if you go there, most likely the language they are using is Kiswahili. Why not use it in Kisumu? So we would really urge the Council of Governors to also encourage the use of Kiswahili. It is not just in schools, because language is improved by speaking it. Most of us are not good in Swahili, so really we encourage speaking it. Even when you go to the supermarket, you go to the restaurants, wherever you are at home, let us speak Kiswahili. Some times ago in schools, especially secondaries and primary, if you spoke your mother tongue, or even Swahili and not English, you are punished. Those are long gone days. Definitely. Today, there are two languages that can be spoken. Even mother tongue is being taught, because we must also encourage retainers of our culture.
Definitely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Asante Daktari, Dr. James Jogu definitely joining us, highlighting the importance of the celebrations around the World Swahili Day, the milestones achieved so far, and definitely breaking down the role of the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO. You know, we're looking forward to a time, I can see you're wearing one of the lapels right there, the Kenyan flag. It's used to identify Kenyans across the border, as well as that armband, you know?
Yes.
So we're looking forward to the day where Swahili is perhaps used to identify Kenyans and those within the sub-Saharan Africa region who are perhaps in the diaspora and whatnot.
In tourism, you know, is already used. Jambo. Literally every tourist coming to Kenya will say Jambo.
Oh yeah, Hakuna
Matata. So really, these phrases, that is one way of spreading the language.
Okay.
Actually, the tourists who come here and they go back to the country, what they remember most, apart from the lions, apart from the beautiful coastline, they are now interested in cultural tourism. And in cultural tourism, the language is very key. That saying of Jambo makes people excited. Actually, along the roads, you'll hear them say Jambo, Jambo. Jambo is a wonderful word for Kenya.
Okay, asante sana.
Karibu
Dr.
sana.
James Njogu definitely joining us. He's the CEO of the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO, helping us break down the importance around the celebrations that are set to be marked, not just in Kenya, but worldwide tomorrow, all to do with the World Swahili Day. Asante sana, Kiswahili kitukuzwe.